Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Lunch Break Live, real talk about obesity, food addiction, recovery, and what's really eating you. I am Carrie Dela Cruz, and you know what? The topic of today's show is, what do you think? So the whole idea behind this topic comes from a famous quote, or a multitude of quotes actually, that were phrased slightly differently, but all meant the same thing, from Albert Einstein. And it went something like this: you can't solve a problem with the same brain that created it. Right? Now, we know that treating the disease of obesity and food addiction and whatever else ails us is a really big problem. And we also know that we cannot get a new brain. So what do we do? This is kind of tricky business, right? We cannot turn in our old brain for a new one, which can only mean one thing. It means that we're going to have to use the brain that we have differently. That seems pretty basic, right? But maybe that sounds a little too simple or simplistic, something like that. Well, let's talk about it. Alrighty. I believe that since we can't get a new brain, and we can't necessarily think differently if we're thinking the same way we've been thinking, it's time to think differently and think new thoughts, all right? So let's see here. The note I made is, we can think new thoughts, approach the problem differently, and solve it with a new way of thinking. So in other words, same problem, right? Treating the disease of obesity, treating food addiction, dealing with life on life's terms, right? Same problem, but we've been approaching it maybe the same way, right? With the same thoughts. We think and feel and believe the same way about it. Well, I think it's kind of time to throw a lot of that away and rethink the things that we think, okay? I know it's not easy. I know it takes effort. I know it takes courage and honesty and commitment and, yes, humility. Humility to acknowledge that the things we've been thinking may not have been so great, may not have been right, all right? Which is why we have this problem that we're trying to deal with in the first place. And I'm going to read this because there is no way I can remember how to say this. But again, my thoughts, I actually thought this, I wrote it down. We think we know what we think, but what do we think about what we know? What? I hate it when I do this to me. All right? We think we know what we think, but what do we think about what we know? That's kind of the point of today's show. All right. I think it's time to rethink some things so that we can solve the problems differently and effectively and live in recovery. All right? Now, in order to do that, we have to know what we think, right? You're like, well, of course, that's easy. I know what I think. Do you really? Do you? I think that the words that we use reflect what we think, but we don't always hear the things we're saying. And we just think we mean one thing, but we believe another. These words can have two meanings to us. They can have the meaning that we want others to believe that they mean, and we can have the meanings that we actually believe that they mean. But which one is right? Which one should we listen to, right? So I think we have to look at the words a little bit differently, which is going to change how we think about things. Let's see here. The note, again, note, I'm going to be referring to a lot of notes because this is kind of deep stuff here, right? I think that in order to change our thinking, we have to know what we think and recognize that those words that reflect our actual thoughts are actually leading us to do the same thing over and over and over and over, right? You've heard that expression, right? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result, a different outcome. Isn't that kind of what we do? You know, we think we know what to do, and yet by following our thinking process, it gets us what we always got. So if we think what we always thought, we get what we always got. That's kind of how I would distill this conversation today, all right? So in other words, it is the same brain, same problem, no solution. All right, so in order to do that, let's drill a little bit deeper here, and let's talk about the words. What am I talking about when I'm talking about the words that we use? All right, we have trigger words. This comes up a lot. Trigger words, which is, oh, that word that you're using there, that has a lot of meaning for me. That's like, ooh, that means this to me. But you see, maybe the word doesn't even really mean that. But we say, oh, that's what it means to me. But if we have to use that word in order to arrive at our solution, which is to treat our obesity and our food addiction and deal with life, right? We might have to reevaluate our definition, reevaluate the true meaning of that word and use it in a healthy way. Let's look at that for a second. All right. Today on my wall, I talked about, is there a difference between punishment and discipline? Punishment and discipline. And you brilliant thinkers out there came up with the idea that, punishment is punitive and negative, and discipline is more positive. And so one is meant to harm, to do harm to, I guess you could say, and the other is to train. All right. And yet I challenged you guys, how often do we use the word punishment in our own life in a punitive way when we're talking about doing the things that we need to do to live healthy lives, right? Well, I'm just going to punish myself because I can't have the thing that I want to have. Because I can't eat cookies, I'm going to punish myself when I eat the cookies. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Yet a lot of you guys talked about discipline, how it gives you more power. It's much more positive and actually yields much greater result, which is to solve the problem of how do I treat my obesity. It doesn't make obesity go away, but it enables you to develop a solution to your problem. And guess what? That solution is going to look, how you implement that solution, how you employ the things that you need to do, going to look a little bit different in everyone's lives, okay? Because our lives are different and we're different. But the basic principles are going to be the same. We know what we need to do. We got to eat, make healthy choices. We got to remain active. We have to have balanced lives. We got to pay attention to our spiritual selves. We got to pay attention to our emotional selves. We got to pay attention to the things that we're thinking, right? Take care of ourselves in healthy ways. Those things look different on everybody. And if there's food addiction thrown into the mix, well, there's things that we're going to have to stay away from, aren't there? Things that we know that we don't stop once we start. All right, so punishment and discipline, and I made some notes. Punishment says, bad, shame on you, you should know better, wrong, hurt. Those are the messages that we get when we use the word punishment. However, when we use the word discipline, discipline says, okay, that was incorrect. That's different than wrong. Incorrect, all right? And it says maybe that was inefficient, not the best way to handle it, not the wisest way to do it. Try this, do differently. So discipline encourages you to do differently, and in order to do differently, you got to think differently. But punishment says don't do it again, and how many of us don't do anything again? Do you see the difference there? All right, that's how we need to use our brains to think differently. Even though it's the same brain, let's come up with thinking differently and coming up with a different solution than we always did. I'm going to put my glasses on. Make it easier. Less squinting, more seeing, right? All right, so guilt, the word guilt, right? Woo, that stops us. No, no, no. Well, how about correction? All right, let's talk about this. Guilt says bad, wrong. Are you noticing a trend here? I feel bad, just feel bad, and I'm going to stay stuck. That's what guilt says. Guilt says stop, stop, just feel bad, you're stuck. But correction says error. Okay, we've got an error here. Let's make a correction. Modify, redo, recover. So guilt says stop. Correction says, okay, let's not repeat the same mistake twice. See what I mean? Triggers, though. These words have so much meaning in our lives, they've kind of lost their original purpose, maybe. And maybe they weren't the right word to use in the first place. Shame, there's a big word that I've talked about before. How about conscious? All right, shame says hide, lie, deny, cover, run. That's what shame says. Run away. Turn your back. right? Don't look this thing in the face. Look down. That's what shame says. Conscious, being conscious says acknowledge what is. Acknowledge the reality of it and learn from it. So shame, healthy shame, serves a purpose, but how often do we nurse and nurture unhealthy shame, which stops us dead in our tracks? Consciousness, being conscious of, means I am aware of the situation. I need to think differently about this thing so that I can come up with a solution to this problem. Shame says, focus on the problem, you're bad and wrong. Conscious says, I'm conscious of a problem and I want to come up with a solution to that problem. All right? So those are some trigger words. Now, reward deprivation. Reward means to add to, and deprive says to take away from. Add to or take away from. I kind of think we're using those words backwards. I really, really do. They're like switched. Okay, so unless we're using the word reward to say, we're going to reward healthy eating with a cookie, and then that somehow adds to your life by adding to your hips. Very confused about that. Or depriving yourself somehow means that you're getting deprived because you're taking away unhealthy behaviors. See what I mean? I think we're using these words backwards, you guys. And we're missing the point of those words. We're only focusing on the negativity of it instead of the positivity, the ways in which we can benefit, learn, and arrive at a solution to a very, very, very big problem in our lives. All right. I think that if I'm going to talk about a process for changing the way we think, it would focus on some main things. Rethink, which means don't just conclude or settle or decide that that's it and there's not going to be any more discussion about it. Rethink, reframe, reimagine, recover. All right? Rethink. All right? So in order to rethink, we got to know what we think, right? We've got to know how we're using those trigger words, maybe. How are we using those to detriment in our lives? Do we need to look at how we use those, or is there a better word to use that'll bring us closer to what we want? And in order to get closer to what we want, once we have honestly, courageously reevaluated the things that we think, we look at it and we say, is that healthy? Does that make sense? Do I need to reframe something here? Because maybe I'm a different person than I was before. Maybe I'm approaching things differently. Maybe I know something now that I didn't know then when I came up with that thought. So it's time for me perhaps to reframe it in the context of the life that I'm actually living now. Not the life that I was living when I came up with that thought and, in the first place, and super glued it down somewhere. I don't know, to the refrigerator. I don't know. So rethink means consider the fact that you're going to have to look at the things that you think again. Reframe based upon your life as it is now, and in considering, and here's where reimagining comes in, what you want for your future. Reimagine. Sometimes, we just don't even dare to dream. We don't even dare to be hopeful about anything, and we get stuck in wishful thinking. Wishful, which is just sitting there really being hopeless, not hopeful. So reimagine. What would it take to, you know what? All the limitations, cast those all aside when you're rethinking and you're reframing. What would it take to get this? Is that reasonable for me? Is that possible? If it's not possible, what do I need to do to make it possible, or can I? Right? Maybe I have to go back to the rethink process, all right? And then finally recover, because that is the goal here. Recover. We are after recovery. So in order to do that, we've got to change the way we think about things, right? And, I understand that a lot of us think, beliefs are beliefs, and they're not meant to change. They're concrete, they're cemented, they define the very essence of who we are. But I'm going to challenge you guys that a lot of the things that we believe were not ours to begin with. were put there by others in our lives when we were very, very young. And while I am not saying that those beliefs are not true, sometimes we have to take them down off the shelf, dust them off, wipe them clean, and say, okay, do I really believe that? And if I really believe that, how is that being, here's another RE word, reflected in my life? Is my life a reflection of what I actually believe? And if it's not a reflection, it's time to rethink that belief and figure out what you really, really do believe, and let your life be a reflection of your thoughts. Got it? So when I talk about Einstein and I talk about the fact that, we can't solve the problem with the same brain that created it, we know, even though Brian, you asked me, how do I get a new brain? I can't get a new brain, right? You're right. But I can use the old brain and think new thoughts. I can think differently. I can decide why I think the things that I think and decide, do I want to keep those things or do I want to let those go in favor of something healthier? So that is my message for today. And I'm going to take a moment. I think I kind of went through all my notes there. I'm going to take a few moments to read what you guys wrote before I sign off. And let's see. I love this. There's a lot of you guys here right now. And again, I don't know why this interface does not let me see all of you. So if I don't do a shout out to you, again, don't take it personally. I just don't see you. Hi, Shannon Watts. Are you still here? I hope you're still here. And Cynthia Tripp and Eric. Hey, I didn't see you yesterday. I'm so glad you're back. And my mama. Those people beat you, Mom. 4 people beat you to the room. Amazing. I'm glad you're here. I'm going to see you later today. Okay, we're going to go get our toenails done. Just saying. And Stephanie, let's see here. Everybody cheering each other on, supporting each other. I super love that. Dolly, I haven't seen you in a little bit while. Let me just see if you guys have any comments for you that you need me to address. Dun, da, da. Well, you guys are just talking to yourself. I need a new brain. Yeah, well, okay, let's just remember the Tin Man. Yeah, he said he needed a new brain, but he really always had a brain. And then all the wizard did was give him like a little rolled up diploma, right? No, Scarecrow only had a brain, heart. Maybe the Tin Man had a heart and the Scarecrow needed a brain. Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, one of those people in Oz, they always had what they always needed, but they just had to think differently about it. And isn't that what the guy behind the curtain actually did when he came out front? He didn't give them something that they didn't already had. He just had them think about it differently. That was so brilliant. My head's going to explode. Totally kidding. All right. Oh, let's see here. All right, then I'm going to wrap it up, you guys. Oh, you're all talking to each other. Are you listening to me? Look, I don't want to be jealous here or anything, but if you're doing all this cross-talking, I mean, are you even listening to, do you need me here, or should I just like open up the room and like sit back and let you guys talk amongst yourselves? I'm just wondering. Okay, I'm totally kidding. Punishment equals critical monkey. That's from the book. I love it. Are you reading the book? Yes, it is. Punishment is critical monkey. I love that connection. Hi, Laura Van Tile. I miss you. We didn't get to spend enough time, although we spent quite a while on Saturday down at OH. Happy anniversary, Dave. You're right, in New Zealand. We did meet 3 years ago. I can't believe that. 3 years ago, I was in New Zealand, and look at me now. What do you think about that? I'm really glad you're here. And Dave, there's 2 Daves. It's like a bookend of Daves. I'm like bookended by Daves. That's like crazy. Rethink, reimagine, recover. I don't know what that means. What does mean? I'm not going to overthink that. I'll just think more about it. All right, reflective thinking. Yeah, exactly. Reflective, because we want to be we are a reflection of our thoughts, aren't we? And if they're not healthy thoughts, well, I'm pretty sure we're going to be reflecting unhealthy behaviors. Don't wish, just do. Absolutely. I mean, a wish is a dream your heart makes. I mean, it was a really great song, but does that really get you too far? It's a good start, but let's see here. Oh, indoctrination, investigate. Dave, the 2 Daves, you guys are both thinkers. You're like deep gray matter thinkers, and you're going to be like, what, is this a future show? Indoctrination, investigation. Dun, dun. It sounds like a program on like the Crime Investigation Channel or something like that. The ID Network, something like that. All right. And Mary, I'm glad to see you as well. So anyway, guys, yeah, goofy kid, that's me. I'm going to let you guys go because it looks like you're just talking amongst yourselves and or making my head explode. So I'm going to leave you to think about this, and I'm encouraged to know, what do you think about what I'm asking you to think about? Do you think there's any validity to it? Do you think that you need to rethink a few things in order to live, to choose and to live in recovery from your obesity and food addiction? I want to know. Oh, I'm putting my hands up, but you can't see. I want to know. I don't have all the answers. I am always open to the possibilities. I'm always willing to think about new things and consider why I believe what I believe. And that, my friends, is what I wish for you. So thank you so much for being here as ever. I'm thinking, because it was so much fun last week, we need to do another one of those shows where you guys ask me questions and I answer them on the show. However, since many of you don't get to join me live, I will probably put the request out there in advance of the show, like a day ahead of time, gather some questions, and do my best to answer as many as I can in the program. All right? So I'm going to leave you with that, and I'm going to remind you all to have courage, seek peace, embrace joy, and above all, live your recovery. And guess what, folks? That's going to involve you to rethink, reframe, and reimagine. See what I did there? Take care, and remember, you cannot stop feeding what's eating you if you don't know what's eating you. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.